Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sharing Stories podcast. In this channel, we discuss books. Today, we have We Chase Shadows by Richard Osman. And I actually want you to start by picturing something for a second.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
So imagine you finally reached it, right? Like that perfectly peaceful golden retirement.
Oh, the dream.
Yeah, exactly. The dream. You are enjoying these quiet, highly predictable days. Maybe you're settling in for, I don't know, a perfectly poured pint at your local village pub.
Just minding your own business.
Right. And the absolutely most stressful part of your entire week is whether the Sunday crossword is, like, particularly tricky.
And it sounds ideal, honestly.
It really does. But then, completely out of nowhere, that pristine peace is just shattered. Like, you are suddenly thrust headfirst into this massive, sprawling international conspiracy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there is a mysterious assassin literally tracking your every move.
See, that's the ultimate nightmare scenario, isn't it? Especially for anyone who has meticulously curated a life of just being left alone. Like, you transition instantly from worrying about a squeaky garden gate to, calculating the trajectory of sniper fire.
Right, the contrast is insane.
It is.
Bring your book to life with AI. Plotsformovies.com helps you create movie-like trailers for your book, allowing filmmakers to visualize your story, just the way you imagined it while writing. Enhance the storytelling experience to a whole new level with realistic characters, immersive voiceovers, and cinematic sound effects. No more boring stock images or generic clips. Captivate your audience, spark curiosity, make readers and filmmakers eager to explore more. Plotsformovies.com, where your story becomes cinema.
The cognitive dissonance of that kind of shift is just massive.
And that collision, the utterly mundane crashing at high speed into the incredibly dangerous, that is the core engine of what we are unpacking in today's deep dive.
It really is the driving force.
Yeah. So we're looking at Richard Osman's highly anticipated new detective series, and specifically this first novel, We Chase Shadows.
Which everyone has been talking about.
Oh, everywhere. And our mission here is to really figure out the structural mechanics of how Osman manages this crazy high-wire act.
Right, the tone balance.
Exactly. Like, how does an author balance high-stakes, lethal international thrills with these cozy, intergenerational family dynamics, and do it without one side completely undermining the other?
Because usually those two tones just cancel each other out.
Yeah, they clash terribly.
Right. If a writer leans too heavily into the family dynamics, the assassin just feels like a cartoon villain, like they don't feel like a real threat.
Totally, or vice versa, right.
Exactly. If they lean too heavily into the grit and the violence of the assassin, the family moments feel so jarring. It's almost like you flipped the channel to a completely different show.
Yeah, like you're suddenly watching a sitcom in the middle of a Bourne movie.
Yes. But the source material highlights that Osman has somehow engineered this very specific frequency where these elements actually amplify each other instead of clashing.
And I think to really understand that engineering, we kind of have to bypass the plot mechanics just for a second and look directly at this unlikely family duo right at the center of all the chaos.
The Wheelers.
The Wheelers, yes. Because sure, the plot might provide the velocity, but the friction between Steve Wheeler and his daughter-in-law, Amy, is what generates the actual heat in this novel.
Oh, absolutely. And it all really begins with Steve's psychological state.
Right. Tell us a bit about Steve.
So, he is a former police officer who has spent decades, literally his whole life, immersed in the worst impulses of society.
Yeah, just surrounded by the darkest stuff.
Exactly. And when someone's entire career is defined by crisis and unpredictability, just constant adrenaline.
Right. Their ideal retirement is probably going to look a bit different from ours.
Exactly. It's usually this desperate retreat into extreme predictability. For Steve, a boring day isn't a lack of excitement. It's a hard-won luxury.
Oh, I like that. A hard-won luxury.
Yeah, he has survived his quota of trauma, basically. So his retreat to this small English village is essentially an emotional barricade.
He's built a fortress of boredom.
Yes, exactly.
But then, you look at the other half of this equation, his daughter-in-law, Amy Wheeler, and her life is just a direct inversion of Steve's.
Complete opposite.
Right, because Amy is a professional bodyguard. She operates in this high-net-worth, incredibly high-risk world of private security.
Very glamorous, but very dangerous.
Totally. Like her Tuesday might involve flying out to some remote private island to guard a billionaire from corporate espionage.
While Steve's Tuesday is, what, claiming his favorite chair at the pub.
Exactly, making sure no one took his spot. So the inciting dynamic of the entire story sparks to life precisely because Amy's high-flying world suffers this catastrophic systemic failure.
Right. Things go very wrong.
Very wrong. One of her assignments turns deadly. And suddenly, she is the one being hunted by these highly capable enemies who are tied to a series of methodical murders.
And the most terrifying aspect of her situation, honestly, isn't even just the physical threat.
What do you mean?
Well, it's the professional isolation. Because in that hyper-paranoid world of private security, when an operation goes sideways...
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, your colleagues, your clients, they instantly become prime suspects. You can't trust anyone.
Right, the whole infrastructure she usually relies on to survive is completely compromised.
Exactly. So she's completely isolated on this huge global stage.
And the authorities aren't an option. Her agency is totally compromised. So she has to fall back on, basically, the only analog connection she has left, which is family.
She has to call Steve.
Yeah, she reaches out to Steve and reluctantly drags him right over that emotional barricade and out of his peaceful retirement.
Which forces an immediate brutal exit from their comfort zones for both of them.
Right, because neither is where they want to be.
No, not at all. Amy is conditioned to be the apex protector, you know?
Yeah.
The one controlling the environment. But her environment has turned hostile, and she actually needs rescue.
Which has to be so hard for her ego, right?
Oh, for sure. And then you have Steve, who is conditioned to just observe the world from this very safe, retired distance. But suddenly, his own blood is literally in the crosshairs.
You know, reading through the notes on their dynamic, I started thinking about this kind of in terms of hardware.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, it's like your classic buddy cop scenario, right? But imagine one partner is this reliable, old-fashioned analog watch. That's Steve.
Okay, I can see that.
Right. He operates on these fundamental internal mechanics. You can drop an analog watch, you can submerge it, and it just keeps ticking because it doesn't rely on an external signal.
Right, it's completely self-contained.
Exactly. Now, Amy, on the other hand, she is like a top-of-the-line, military-grade smartwatch.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Thanks. Yeah. She has global tracking, instant updates, a million high-tech features. But a smartwatch is completely useless the second it loses its network or the battery dies.
And Amy's network basically just died.
Exactly. So my question for you is, how does this clash of generations and skill sets really drive the narrative beyond just, providing comedic relief?
That's a great question. And the mechanism of your analogy actually holds up perfectly under scrutiny because it forces a necessary synthesis between them.
A synthesis.
Yeah. It's not just there for laughs when Steve complains about modern tech, right?
Mm.
Steve's old-school investigative instincts, like reading a room, understanding the tiny nuances of human deception, relying on just infinite patience, those are analog skills.
Right. A smartwatch cannot read a room.
Exactly. It can tell you a heart rate, but it can't tell you if someone is lying with their eyes. Meanwhile, Amy's modern security expertise, her tactical physical knowledge, and her ability to navigate these crazy complex digital landscapes.
Things an analog watch is entirely blind to.
Precisely. So they are literally two halves of a complete investigative unit.
Which really pushes the story beyond a standard procedural, doesn't it?
Oh, entirely.
Yeah.
It elevates it into this very poignant exploration of trust and aging.
Aging is a big theme here.
Huge. Steve is forced to confront this quiet, terrifying fear that he might actually be too old or too slow or just too out of touch to protect the person he loves most.
That breaks your heart a little bit.
It does. And Amy has to confront the terror of vulnerability, of actively handing over the reins when her entire instinct is to shield everyone else.
Right.
So the narrative basically uses the mechanics of a murder investigation to prove the enduring strength of family. The core tension isn't just about catching a killer.
It's about whether they can bridge those differences to even survive in the first place.
Exactly.
And this fragile trust they're building, it's put under the absolute ultimate pressure test when the actual violence enters the frame, right? Because Amy's world doesn't just tap politely on Steve's door.
No, it crashes right through the window.
In a spectacular, deeply unsettling way. Like, the inciting incident is so visually and thematically striking.
Oh, the juxtaposition is brilliant.
Right. You have the sun rising over these gorgeous Italian hills. It's this stunning private villa, basically the absolute pinnacle of luxury and serenity.
A place where nothing bad is ever supposed to happen.
Exactly. And right there, just violating that picturesque landscape on the stone steps, is a dead body.
It's a very deliberate juxtaposition by Osman. He's showing the brutal reality of violence infecting a space that was literally designed to keep the ugly parts of the world out.
And it isn't just a random body either. There's this threatening note left with it, signed by a, quote, mystery man.
Very ominous.
Very. And this specific provocation forces the formation of what becomes known as We Solve Murders HQ.
I love that name.
So good. So we have our core duo of Amy and Steve, and they're joined by this new character, Rosie. And they take on this case for a client who vehemently refuses to involve the police.
Which is a classic setup.
Right. Why do they do that?
Well, a client avoiding the authorities is a classic noir trope for a reason. It immediately raises the ceiling on the stakes.
Because there's no safety net.
Exactly. It tells you, as the reader, that the formal systems of justice are either totally inadequate or actively corrupt in this scenario. It isolates our trio even further. It forces them to operate entirely in the shadows, outside the law, just relying on their own amateur and professional wits.
And as soon as they start pulling on this thread, the scale of the case just explodes geographically.
Well, it goes everywhere.
Yeah, the clues drag them from that serene Italian villa into the oppressive desert heat of Palm Springs, then over to the chaotic, crowded streets of Barcelona, and then somehow, miraculously, all the way back to the damp, cozy confines of Steve's village pub in England.
And that shifting geography, that's a very deliberate pacing tool utilized by Osman.
How so?
Well, by constantly bouncing the characters across these radically different environments, he prevents them, and you, the reader, from ever establishing a sense of equilibrium.
You never get to settle in.
Right. The ground is constantly moving. The heat of Palm Springs demands a totally different physical and emotional response than the crowded streets of Barcelona.
It keeps the tension so taut.
Exactly. Until they finally retreat to that pub, which functions as the only real emotional anchor in a turbulent world.
And the suspects they encounter across these locations, I mean, they're incredibly distinct, almost larger-than-life archetypes, right?
Very much so.
You have Sweden's most wanted criminal bringing this visceral, professional, physical danger.
Right.
Then you have a canny ex-wife who introduces deep personal grudges, psychological manipulation, intense financial motives.
A different kind of danger entirely.
Yeah. And then a fierce business rival, bringing the ruthlessness of corporate espionage into the fold. The murderer keeps slipping through these different spheres of influence, and the threat just slowly inches closer and closer to Steve's safe haven.
It operates almost like an expanding web.
Yeah, that's a good way to picture it.
The narrative starts at this single, hyper-focused point, the body on the Italian steps, and spiders out into this massive international conspiracy involving money, power, and these deeply buried secrets.
Right. But, I actually want to push back a little bit on how this web is spun.
Okay, let's hear it.
Based on some of the critical reception in our source material. So the Daily Express reviewed this book, and they described it as, quote, sitcom meets Bond.
Right, I saw that.
So my question is, if a narrative leans that heavily on wit, situational comedy, and sitcom-style character quirks like, I don't know, Steve complaining about the legroom on a flight to Palm Springs, doesn't that actively deflate the tension?
It's a fair question.
Like, do the stakes end up feeling too light? If I'm laughing at an old man's knee pain, I'm struggling to see how I'm also supposed to be terrified of a Swedish assassin.
I get that. That is the central paradox of genre blending. But the mechanics of human empathy actually work in the exact opposite way.
Really?
Yeah, the humor doesn't deflate the tension. It is the vital ingredient that makes the danger effective.
Wait, how does laughing make you more scared? That sounds counterintuitive.
Okay, consider the alternative. In a hyper-serious, pure action thriller like your standard Bond story, the protagonists are often portrayed as these hyper-competent, stoic monoliths, right?
They never flinch.
They don't feel pain the way we do, they don't get annoyed by trivial things, and they are essentially unkillable superheroes.
Yeah, they're gonna survive.
Right. You enjoy the spectacle, but you don't genuinely fear for their lives. Osman's approach, which the Observer Review actually astutely picked up on, is to revel in the characters' everyday foibles.
So you're saying their flaws are the anchor point for our empathy?
Exactly. When a writer spends time making you laugh at Steve's stubbornness or Amy's specific frustrations with her father-in-law, they're basically tricking your brain into recognizing these characters as real, vulnerable human beings.
Oh, wow.
You become invested in their mundane happiness. The humor systematically lowers your defenses as a reader. You are relaxed, you are smiling, your guard is totally down.
And then
And then the assassin kicks the door in. The contrast makes the psychological snap of that tension hit infinitely harder.
Because it feels like it's happening to someone you actually know.
Precisely. The stakes feel terrifying because you are looking at ordinary people you have grown to care about, thrust into a lethal situation they are fundamentally unequipped to handle.
It's like it weaponizes the cozy genre against the reader.
That's a perfect way to phrase it.
We wouldn't care if a cardboard cutout with a gun got shot. But because it's Steve, who just wants to get back to his crossword, the threat feels so invasive and deeply personal.
The comedy functions as the bait, drawing you in, and the thriller elements are the hook that keeps you trapped.
I love that. And understanding that structural trick really perfectly frames the next phase of our deep dive.
The author himself.
Exactly. I want to examine the architect behind the structure, Richard Osman, and what we might categorize as the Osman signature.
Because it's a very distinct signature.
It is. This specific calibration of humor, humanity, and suspense hasn't just produced a good book, it has turned him into a global publishing phenomenon.
His ascent in the literary world is genuinely unprecedented in recent publishing history.
To give you some context on the author, if you don't know him, Richard Osman spent years as a prominent television presenter and producer in the UK.
Very well known over there.
Yeah. And his previous venture into fiction, the Thursday Murder Club series, is a record-breaking, multi-million copy bestseller across the globe.
It's everywhere.
It's huge. It's actually currently being adapted into a major Netflix film produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment.
Which is wild.
Right. And he writes these incredibly complex, lethal plots while living this seemingly idyllic life in London with his wife, Ingrid, and their cats, Liesel and Lottie.
That contrast alone is great. But, that television production background is really the skeleton key to understanding his mastery of the page.
How so? Does it translate that directly?
Oh, entirely.
Right.
Producing television is entirely about managing pacing, right?
Yes.
Balancing an ensemble cast so no one character eats all the oxygen, and knowing precisely when to cut a scene.
Ah, so keeping the audience engaged.
Exactly. He understands exactly how to deliver a punchline that releases the tension just enough without undercutting the underlying drama of the narrative arc.
And that mastery is really reflected in the critical acclaim We Chase Shadows is receiving, like from the absolute heavyweights of the crime fiction world.
He's getting praise from everyone.
Yeah. Lee Child, the mind behind the brutally efficient Jack Reacher, calls this book, quote, irresistible.
That's high praise.
Right. Ian Rankin, arguably one of the modern masters of gritty, hard-boiled detective fiction, calls it deplorably good.
I love that phrasing.
Val McDermott describes it as warm, wise, and witty. The Sunday Times points out that it is gripping and rather moving, while The Independent actually issues a warning to readers to underestimate him at your own peril.
Getting universal praise from the architects of the grim, cynical thriller genre for a book featuring a retired man complaining about his routine. I mean, that is a massive validation of his structural ingenuity.
It really is. And reading those reviews, an observation struck me about the overarching themes Osman is playing with here.
What did you notice?
Well, we're dealing with justice, systemic corruption, physical courage, moral redemption.
Heavy stuff.
Incredibly heavy themes. But in the broader mystery genre, which is currently dominated by these cynical, world-weary anti-heroes who trust no one, drink too much, and view the world as this broken machine.
Right, the typical hard-boiled detective.
Yeah, compared to that, Osman's work is fiercely, almost aggressively optimistic. So I have to ask, is this underlying optimism the actual secret weapon that makes his complex mysteries resonate with millions of people in a very high-anxiety world?
If you synthesize the core philosophy of We Chase Shadows, the answer is an undeniable yes.
Really? It all comes down to optimism.
I think so. Traditionally, the mystery genre functions as a way to restore order to a chaotic world.
Right. A crime happens, the detective solves it.
Exactly. A crime disrupts the social fabric. The detective stitches it back together by catching the killer. But a vast majority of modern thrillers leave you feeling bleak even after the resolution.
Yeah, they do.
The killer is caught, sure, but the world is still fundamentally rotten.
The detective wins, but the victory costs him his marriage, his soul, and any remaining faith in humanity.
Right. The order is restored, but the house is still burned down.
That's a great way to put it.
And Osman categorically rejects that nihilism. His stories insist loudly that loyalty, intergenerational friendship, and just basic human decency can not only survive, but actually thrive under the pressure of extreme danger.
So it's an antidote to the real world.
Exactly. The optimism is his secret weapon because it offers an antidote to the cynicism we see every day. The core message isn't about exceptional people doing exceptional things.
Right, it's Steve and Amy.
Yeah. It is about the vast reserves of unexpected strength that ordinary people discover within themselves when they're forced into extraordinary circumstances.
Like Steve finding the courage to step up.
Exactly. Steve Wheeler is an aging man grappling with his own obsolescence who finds the profound courage required to shield his family.
I'm Amy.
Amy is a hardened professional who unlearns her isolation and discovers the tactical advantage of actually relying on the people who love her.
It's the insistence on finding warmth within the shadows.
Yes, perfectly said.
I mean, the title itself, We Chase Shadows, is an acknowledgement that the darkness exists, right? He isn't writing a sanitized world.
Not at all.
There are brutal murders, international conspiracies, deep, deep corruption, but the operative word in the title is chase.
They are actively moving.
Right. The characters are actively moving against the darkness, bringing their own light into it.
It is a refusal to let violence and corruption be the defining characteristics of the human experience. In Osman's universe, the defining characteristics of humanity are warmth, collective wisdom, and a very sharp wit.
I love that. So bringing all of this together, we started by visualizing that perfect, hermetically sealed retirement, right? Entirely upended by the chaos of the outside world.
A rude awakening.
Very rude. But through our analysis of We Chase Shadows, we've seen how Osman uses that disruption not just to deliver a highly kinetic, globe-trotting mystery, but to conduct a stress test on human connection.
Right.
It explores what happens when the people you love desperately need you to step out from behind your emotional barricades.
It acts as a mirror, really, challenging the characters, and by direct extension, you, the reader, to fundamentally reconsider what you are capable of enduring and achieving when the theoretical suddenly becomes terrifyingly real.
Which leaves you with a final, slightly provocative thought to ponder long after you finish listening to this deep dive.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
If your own carefully constructed, comfortable routine was violently interrupted by a high-stakes international conspiracy,
Huh.
what hidden strengths or perhaps long-dormant skills would you have to rely on to survive?
That's a big question.
Right. If the network went down, would you have the internal mechanics to keep ticking?
A fascinating psychological exercise to run the next time you find yourself enjoying a perfectly quiet moment.
Definitely. So as you head back out into the predictability of your own routines, hopefully without any international assassins trailing your movements, we do have a quick favor to ask.
Just a small one.
We at sharingstories.in are showcasing books by Indian authors through the hashtag #PushingIndianAuthors campaign. This content is supported by plots4movies.com, an AI-enabled book trailer platform where you can watch a 1-minute trailer of the book to understand it better before you buy it.
Being able to visually gauge the tone of a narrative before diving in is an incredibly useful tool for any reader.
It really is. Please consider subscribing and supporting the channel so we can continue bringing you these comprehensive deep dives into the mechanics of great storytelling. We also highly urge you to buy We Chase Shadows and read it using the link provided in the description.
You won't regret it.
No, you won't. And finally, before you go, drop down into the comments below and let us know your favorite book by an Indian author. We love seeing your recommendations and expanding our own reading lists. Until next time, keep reading and keep one eye on the shadows.
Take care, everyone.